Respect it. The moment you stop chasing a man who chose silence over honesty, something shifts deep inside him. At first, he thinks your silence means you no longer care. But over time, he begins to realize something painful. You did not stop loving him. You simply stopped begging for what should have been given freely. And that realization becomes the kind of regret that keeps a man awake at night. There is a kind of pain people rarely talk about. It is not the pain of screaming arguments. It is not the pain of doors slamming or dramatic goodbyes. No. The deepest pain often comes from silence, from unanswered messages, from conversations that suddenly become cold, from watching someone you love slowly become distant while pretending everything is normal. And the hardest part is this: when someone goes silent on you, your first instinct is to fight for them. You overthink every word. You replay every memory. You wonder if you did something wrong. You start blaming yourself for their emotional distance. You tell yourself maybe they are busy, maybe they are stressed, maybe if you love harder, they will come back emotionally. But respect it, love was never supposed to feel like chasing someone who keeps running away from you. A lot of women lose themselves trying to keep a connection alive with a man who already checked out emotionally. They send the long paragraphs. They double text. They beg for communication. They try to become more understanding, more patient, more available. And sadly, many men become comfortable in that imbalance. They begin to believe that no matter how little effort they give, she will always stay. That is where the mistake begins. Because a man often does not recognize the value of consistent love while he is receiving it every day. Human nature is strange. Sometimes people only recognize warmth after they feel coldness. Sometimes they only recognize loyalty after they experience loneliness. And that is why your silence becomes powerful. Not because silence is a game, not because you are trying to manipulate him, but because silence is sometimes the first moment a person is finally forced to sit alone with the consequences of their actions. See, when you stop arguing for attention, he notices. When you stop asking for reassurance, he notices. When you stop trying to hold the relationship together by yourself, he notices. At first, his ego may convince him that you will come back. He may think this is temporary. He may believe you are just emotional. He distracts himself. He stays busy. He avoids thinking deeply because many people use distractions to escape accountability. But silence has a strange power. The longer your absence remains calm, the louder it becomes in his mind. Because now, there are no more emotional speeches to ignore, no more calls to reject, no more reminders of your love arriving every morning, and suddenly he has space to think. That is when memories begin attacking him. He remembers how why, or used to check on him, how you celebrated his smallest victories, how you stayed loyal during difficult moments, how your love made his life softer, warmer, safer. And respect it. This is the part nobody tells you. A man is deeply affected by the peace a woman brings into his life, sometimes even more than beauty, because beauty can attract attention, but peace touches the soul. When a woman truly loves a man, she becomes part of his emotional home. Her voice becomes familiar comfort. Her presence becomes stability. Her care becomes routine. And many men make the tragic mistake of treating that love as permanent until it disappears. Then reality hits. He starts noticing your absence in ordinary moments, in the silence of his room, during stressful days, during victories he can no longer share with you, during lonely nights when distractions stop working, and that regret grows slowly, not because you became cruel, not because you played games, but because you finally chose you, ourself, There is something powerful about a woman who stops forcing connection, a woman who realizes her worth and quietly walks away without hatred. That kind of silence is unforgettable because it carries dignity. See, anger fades quickly, but calm detachment stays in a person's mind for years. A screaming goodbye can be dismissed as emotion, but peaceful silence that forces reflection. I once heard a man say something that stayed with me forever. He said, "The woman I regret most was not the one who fought me the hardest. It was the one who quietly stopped trying." And respected, that sentence carries truth. Because when a woman stops trying, it usually means she has exhausted her heart completely. Women do not emotionally disconnect overnight. It happens after countless disappointments, countless tears, countless moments of feeling unseen. By the time she becomes silent, she has already fought internal battles nobody saw. And suddenly the man who ignored her efforts realized, as something terrifying, she can live without him. That realization shakes people deeply because many relationships survive only through one person constantly carrying the emotional weight. The moment that person lets go, the reality of the imbalance becomes impossible to ignore. Now let me tell you something important. Matching his silence is not about revenge. It is not about punishing someone. It is about self-respect. There comes a moment in life when protecting your peace becomes more important than proving your love. And mature people understand this. Real love should not require you to abandon your dignity just to keep someone interested. If someone truly values you, they will not feel comfortable losing connection with you. They will communicate, they will reassure, they will show effort. And if they do not, your silence becomes the answer words could never fully explain. Because silence says, I deserve reciprocity. I deserve consistency. I deserve love that does know. Leave me emotionally starving and respect it. The most beautiful part is this. The moment you stop obsessing over being chosen by someone else, you finally choose yourself. That is when your energy changes. That is when your confidence returns. That is when your peace slowly rebuilds. And strangely enough, that is often when the other person finally wakes up emotionally. Not because you chased them, not because you convinced them, but because your absence forced them to confront what your presence truly meant. There is a moment that happens after heartbreak that changes everything. It is the moment a woman becomes tired, not angry, not bitter, just tired. Tired of carrying conversations alone, tired of wondering where she stands, tired of pretending she is okay while silently breaking inside. And respected, when a woman reaches that emotional exhaustion, something inside her becomes still. That stillness scares a man more than tears ever could, because tears mean she still cares. Aries enough to fight, but silence means she is learning how to live without him. Most people think regret appears instantly after someone leaves, but real regret moves slowly. It creeps in during ordinary moments, during empty mornings, during quiet nights, during times when life becomes difficult and the person who once gave unconditional support is no longer there. That is when a man begins to understand the emotional value of the woman he took for granted. See, many men mistake consistency for weakness. They mistake patience for desperation. They see a loving woman always being there and assume she always will be. But life has a painful way of teaching lessons ego refuses to learn willingly. Because eventually he meets people who do not love him the same way. He experiences conversations that feel empty. He experiences attention without depth. He experiences relationships that look exciting on the surface, but lack emotional safety. And suddenly he remembers you. Not just your beauty, not just your affection, but your heart. He remembers how deeply you understood him, how you listened when nobody else did, how you encouraged him during difficult seasons, how you gave him emotional security without asking for much in return. And here is the painful truth. People often realize emotional safety was rare only after they lose it. The world is full of temporary excitement, but genuine peace, genuine loyalty, genuine understanding, those things are rare. That is why silence becomes haunting, because your absence forces comparison. Now he sees the difference between attention and genuine care, between attraction and emotional connection, between convenience and true love. And respect it. This is where many women make a mistake. The moment the man starts returning emotionally, they immediately forget the pain that pushed them away in the first place. They become so happy to finally receive attention that they abandon the boundaries they built during. G healing, but you must understand something. A person missing you is not the same as a person changing. Sometimes loneliness creates temporary emotions. Sometimes regret comes from discomfort, not growth. And if someone truly values you after losing you, their actions must become consistent, not emotional for only a few days. Because mature love is proven through effort, not temporary panic. A man who truly regrets losing a good woman does not just send messages at midnight. He changes behaviors. He becomes intentional. He communicates clearly. He stops expecting her to carry the emotional relationship alone. That is real accountability. And respect it, one of the strongest things a woman can do is refuse to abandon her self-worth simply because someone finally noticed her value after she walked away. Never let delayed appreciation make you forget prolonged neglect, because many women spend years begging for bare minimum effort only to receive apologies after they emotionally detach. But by then, something has already changed inside them. Their heart has learned distance. Their spirit has learned survival. Their peace has learned independence. And once a woman truly discovers peace without chaos, it becomes very difficult for her to return to emotional confusion. That is why your silence becomes unforgettable. Not because it is loud, but because it is calm. There is something deeply powerful about calmness after pain. It tells the world you suffered, healed, and still chose dignity over destruction. And trust me, respect it. People remember how you leave them. If you leave with chaos, they remember the drama. If you leave with desperation, they remember the begging. But if you leave with grace, they remember the loss. That loss becomes heavier over time, because now he sees your absence everywhere, in the songs you used to love, in the little habits you had, in the moments he instinctively reaches for his phone to tell you something before remember. And you are no longer emotionally available to him. And here is something many people never admit openly. Men often process heartbreak later than women. Women usually feel everything immediately. They cry, reflect, question themselves, and slowly begin healing. But many men distract themselves at first. They suppress emotions. They seek entertainment, attention, work, or temporary escapes. Then one day, reality catches them. And when it does, it hits hard, because now the silence becomes permanent enough to feel real. Now he realizes you are no longer waiting emotionally. You are rebuilding yourself, growing yourself, protecting your peace. And nothing humbles a person faster than realizing the one they thought would always stay has finally moved forward. But respect it. This story is not truly about him. That is the part I need every woman listening to understand deeply. Your healing cannot depend on whether someone regrets hurting you. Your value cannot depend on whether Mione comes back. Your peace cannot depend on someone finally realizing your worth. Because the greatest transformation happens when you stop needing validation from the people who fail to appreciate you properly. That is freedom, when you no longer wake up desperate for a text, when you no longer measure your worth through someone's attention, when you no longer chase closure from people who created confusion, that is emotional maturity. And ironically, that confidence becomes magnetic, not because you are pretending not to care, but because you genuinely begin valuing yourself again. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into someone's inconsistent love. You stop accepting emotional crumbs. You stop begging people to see what should have been obvious from the beginning. And respect it. Once a woman truly learns her value, her silence no longer comes from pain. It comes from wisdom. And respect it. Wisdom changes the way a woman loves. Before wisdom, she chases answers. After ISDM, she pays attention to actions. Before wisdom, she keeps giving chances, hoping consistency will appear. After wisdom, she understands that patterns reveal truth better than promises ever will. Life teaches painful lessons, but some lessons become the foundation of your strength. And one of the hardest lessons many women learn is this: you better not force someone to value what they are emotionally careless with. No amount of loyalty can heal a person committed to inconsistency. No amount of patience can replace emotional maturity. And no amount of love can convince someone to appreciate you if they only recognize value through loss. That is why silence becomes necessary sometimes. Not to manipulate, not to punish, but to protect your spirit from slowly breaking apart. See, there are women listening right now who have spent months trying to save relationships alone. Women who kept conversations alive while receiving cold replies. Women who stayed awake crying while pretending to. Everyone else that everything was okay. And the sad part is, many of them lost themselves in the process. They became anxious, overthinking became normal, peace disappeared from their lives. Their confidence slowly faded because rejection has a way of making people question their worth. But respect it. Somebody else's inability to love you correctly should never become evidence that you are hard to love. Sometimes people are simply emotionally unavailable. Sometimes they are immature. Sometimes they do not recognize genuine love until life humbles them through loss. And unfortunately, growth often arrives late. That is why many men return after a woman finally detaches emotionally. By the time he realizes her value, she has already spent nights rebuilding herself from the pain he ignored. He suddenly wants communication after teaching her silence. He suddenly wants consistency after giving confusion. He suddenly wants closeness after creating distance. But by then she is different. Rent. Pain changed her, not into a cruel woman, not into a bitter woman, but into a wiser woman. And wisdom creates boundaries. Now she notices effort. Now she notices inconsistency quickly. Now she understands that words mean little without emotional responsibility behind them. That transformation is powerful because it changes the energy she carries into every relationship afterward. She no longer fears losing people who fail to value her. She fears losing herself trying to keep them. And that shift changes everything. Respect it. There is a quiet confidence that comes from healing properly. It is not loud arrogance. It is not revenge. It is peace. The peace of knowing you survived heartbreak. The peace of knowing you stopped begging for bare minimum effort. The peace of knowing your heart remains soft even after disappointment. Because healing is not becoming cold. Healing is learning discernment. It is learning that love should feel safe, not confusing. It is learning that communication should feel natural, not forced. It is learning that real connection should not constantly leave you emotionally drained. And when a woman finally reaches that understanding, her silence carries power because it is no longer an emotional reaction. It becomes self-respect. Now let me say something every man needs to hear. A good woman does not disappear suddenly. She disappears in stages. First, she stops explaining her pain repeatedly. Then she stops expecting consistency. Then she stops asking for reassurance. Then she starts emotionally withdrawing little by little. And by the time she finally becomes silent, she has already mourned the relationship internally. That is why some men become shocked when she leaves peacefully. They think everything was fine because there was no dramatic ending. But respected silence was the warning. Her exhaustion was the warning. Her emotional distance was the warning. Her quiet disappointment was the warning. And many people ignore quiet pain because it is less uncomfortable than confrontation until it becomes permanent loss. That loss becomes regret because now he finally sees the full picture. He sees how much emotional labor she carried, how much love she poured into the relationship, how many chances she gave before choosing herself. And the painful part is, he often realizes this too late. Because once a woman truly heals, she rarely returns to the version of herself that tolerated emotional neglect. She may forgive, she may wish him well, but she no longer abandons herself for love. That is growth. And respected, this message is not about making someone regret losing you. That cannot be your life mission. Your mission is becoming whole again. Your mission is rebuilding confidence after disappointment. Your mission is protecting your peace. Your mission is learning that your value exists even when someone fails to recognize it. Because the truth is, the right people will never require you to or destroy your self-respect to keep their attention. Real love brings clarity. Real love brings effort. Real love brings emotional safety. And if someone only wakes up emotionally after losing you, let that teach you something important about human nature. Some people only understand the value of water after walking through a desert. But you respect it, you must never become thirsty for validation from people who emotionally starved you. Choose peace, choose dignity, choose yourself. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is become silent and let life teach them the lesson your love tried to teach gently all along. And respect it as this message comes to an end. I want you to remember something that could change your entire life. You were never asking for too much. You were simply asking the wrong person to give what your heart deserved naturally. There is nothing wrong with wanting consistency. Nothing wrong with wanting reassurance. Nothing wrong with wanting EF. For it, communication, loyalty, and emotional presence. Those are not unrealistic expectations. Those are the foundations of real love. So stop shrinking your needs just to keep people comfortable. Stop apologizing for wanting clarity. Stop convincing yourself that confusion is normal in relationships. Love should never leave you constantly questioning your worth. And if someone's silence forced you into pain, let your silence now become the beginning of your healing. Because respect it, sometimes distance is not punishment. Sometimes distance is protection. Protection from losing your confidence. Protection from emotional exhaustion. Protection from becoming someone you no longer recognize. And one day, I promise you this, you will look back at the nights you cried over being ignored, and you will thank God you stopped chasing what was draining your spirit. You will realize that walking away did not make you weak. It saved you. And the person who once underestimated your love, I eventually regret it deeply. They may replay memories in their mind for years. They may search for your energy in other people and never truly find it again. But your life cannot pause waiting for somebody else's realization. You must continue growing, continue healing, continue loving yourself enough to never accept emotional inconsistency again. Because your silence was never about revenge. It was about finally hearing your own worth louder than their neglect. And respect it. The beautiful thing about choosing yourself is this. The moment you stop begging for love, you begin attracting respect. The moment you stop chasing validation, you begin discovering peace. And the moment you realize your value, nobody can make you feel small again. So if you are hurting today, hold on. Do not let temporary heartbreak convince you that you are unlovable. Some people lose good things because they were too distracted, too immature, or too emotionally blind to recognize what they had. That is their lesson to live with. Your lesson is different. Your lesson is learning that your heart is precious, your energy is valuable, your peace matters. And the right love, the real love, will never require you to abandon yourself just to keep it alive. Until then, walk with dignity, heal with grace, and never forget this truth. When you match his silence, you do not lose your power. You finally remember it.